Perfect. Right. Well, hello, and thanks for joining us from wherever you are joining us from. I'm Dan Jenkins. I'm a professor of leadership and organizational studies at University of Southern Maine, and have the pleasure of being a co-chair of the teaching and pedagogy / andragogy fan focus area network for ALE. And also with me is my co-chair, Dr. Kate McCain, or my partner in crime, as we lead the fan and try to bring you all as much community building and develop our community of practice with all things leadership education. And we're really excited about offering this first quote unquote web shop. So they can get a more interactive spin on a webinar. And this is an encore performance, if you will. There may be some new things that I'm not aware of from a fantastic workshop that I attended in person when I was at the International Leadership Association's conference in October in Vancouver. And I thought this would be an absolutely fantastic type of workshop to bring to our ALE members, and that it would probably translate exceptionally well for Zoom. So I'm so super grateful for our presenters today. So we've got Dr. Cassandra Cox, Dr. Jill Rucker, and Dr. Jessica Benson. And then I want to give some thank yous to Kate McCain, my partner in crime, and also our directors at large on the board, the ALE board, John Banner and Catherine Woods, for setting this up and promoting and making sure that we have all kinds of participants here. And so, and if you have a workshop that perhaps you'd like to transform into a quote unquote web shop and share with ALE members, please reach out to Kate and I. I'll put my email in the chat in just a moment. And I hope you all have a great experience. And with that, I will turn it over to our presenters / facilitators.
Well, thanks for joining us today. The three of us are very excited to be the inaugural, I think Dr. Jenkins was calling it a web shop. So we are excited to do that today. And my colleagues and I were excited to share with you some of our experiences in AI, and then also let you have some interactive experiences today with AI. So I'm going to go ahead, and Dr. Jessica Benson is going to kick us off, and then Dr. Cox is going to talk, and then I'll talk for a little bit. So Dr. Benson? Oh, except you're muted.
Thank you, guys. I sprinted over here from a doctor's appointment that started at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. It went very long. Have we already gotten everyone, if you haven't already, to scan the QR codes? Has that already happened, Jill?
It has not.
Perfect. So there's some QR codes on your screen. The top one is they go to the same thing, but they are to allow you to create a free ChatGPT account. So as we're kind of introducing ourselves, feel free to scan that, or you can just go to ChatGPT. You can type it in your Google search bar and create an account that way, so you have access. I think Cassandra created the second one using AI, so it looks a little different, a little bit more modern, and so that is there. Okay, so without further ado, my name is Jess Benson. I'm an assistant professor at Mississippi State University in agricultural leadership, and I am also the associate director of the Thad Cochran Ag Leadership Program here in the state of Mississippi. That's our rural leadership program. I use AI just about every single day in my role here. I love to use it. I'm excited to share with you all. I use it for recommendation letters. I use it to help me write lesson plans. I use it to spell check things and check my grammar, and sometimes just to put words on a page and say, please help me think of what I'm thinking of. And so all the things, but that's a little bit about me. It's really wild to think that a year and a half ago that Dr. Rucker, Dr. Cox, and I were talking about dipping our toes into this world and what that all looked like. Very different for the three of us. And then here we are a year and a half later, and it's turned into like something that I think we utilize every day and are sharing with our colleges and our departments and with you all. So happy to be here, and I'm excited for today.
I'm Cassandra Cox, and I'm also an assistant professor, but I'm at the University of Arkansas, and I transitioned from an instructor position last fall. So I had been here for 20 years prior to that, teaching leadership and communications courses in our department. In terms of ChatGPT and AI technologies, one of our big pushes in our program is workplace and workforce development. And so my husband was part of a process where they started a new company, and every day he was coming home and asking me questions about, okay, my bosses are saying they wanted this, new product guide or this new, strategy guide, and they just told me to get a chat GPT and produce it and do some modifications. And so he was like, should I be doing that? Should I not? Can you help me? And so I really got interested because pretty much everything for that entire business startup was generated out of some form of AI. And so then I started thinking, like, how can we leverage that to get our students ready for workforce? So like Jess, I use it all the time. My to-do list at 7:30 when I got home last night still had 10 items on it. And my first thought was, how many of these can I crank out using the assistance of AI so I can get to bed before 1 a.m. and actually be presentable today for this workshop? So I'll hand it over to Jill.
Hi, my name is Dr. Jill Rucker. I'm also at the University of Arkansas. I have on my Razorback Red today, and if you all want to learn how to call the hogs at the end of the workshop, I can teach you how to do that. But I'm excited to get to partner with Jessica and Cassandra on this web shop. I teach leadership and communications as well. And again, as Cassandra said, I'm very interested in employability skills for my students. I always tell them my job is to help you get a job. And so my experience with AI, if I'm honest about it, when it comes to technology, I'm always very nervous. And as AI started to come to the forefront, I was nervous about using it. And so of the three of us, I would say that I'm I was and still am at times the most hesitant. Sometimes I feel like I need a little hand holding. I'm also a rule follower. Let me say that again. I am a rule follower. So being aware of my university's policies or sometimes lack thereof has been something that I've been staying on top of as well. So again, today we are looking for open and candid conversation. We've got some interactive activities built in so that you all can play around with AI, specifically Chat GPT. And so the overview of our workshop today, first of all, we want us all to understand what generative AI is. So what's the good, what's the bad, what's the ugly, what's its potential, what's its limitations. Next, we want to help you identify very specific ways that you can use Chat GPT, following your policies, into your leadership education curriculum and potentially even as research tools. And then finally, we will work with you to create a personalized plan so that you can integrate AI into your leadership curriculum. So before we begin, we want to take just a couple of minutes. If you all could either scan the QR code, or Cassandra has dropped a link to our opening question section. If you all will take just a couple of minutes to collect your thoughts, we will pause for just a hot second while we allow you to do that. So and perhaps when you're done, if you could give us in the chat box, if you could give us like a thumbs up, then we'll know when it's best for us to move on. So if everybody could just take a couple of minutes to do that, that would be great. And we had a question about if we'd be sharing our PowerPoint. So just so you know, I always recommend taking detailed notes, but you should know at the end, we are going to have a shared folder that we will have for the participants. So you're welcome to take detailed notes, but also know that we will be sharing materials with you as well. And just a reminder, when you're done, if you'll give us the thumbs up, Cassandra Gonzalez from A Hero, look at you being first, giving us that thumbs up so that we know that you're done. We appreciate it. That just kind of helps us gauge. That's one of the problems with web shops, is that we can't see your faces to tell like when you guys are ready to roll. So thanks for giving us that thumbs up so that we can manage our time effectively.
Okay, it looks like most people have completed that at this point, either through a visual thumbs up, a thumbs up over your avatar on there, or in the chat. So we are going to move on. If you need another second, go ahead and take that. We wanted to start with a little activity to get you all thinking and going here. And so one of the things is that ability to discern actual intelligence, so what our students are doing or what we might be producing versus what artificial intelligence can produce, especially generative AI. And so I've got a couple of examples here. The first one is an example of a research abstract that you might see. So take a second to look at the scholarly work A and try to decide for yourself if this is human generated or AI generated. Okay. You can drop that in the chat as well. Okay, we're going to move on to the B so that way you can do your comparison here. Then when you have your decision made, identify if scholarly A or scholarly B, just use A or B, is generated by AI. Okay, we had a pretty solid support for A, and now we've got a little bit of dissension in there that maybe B was the one that was generated. And so if you've looked at generative AI content very often, there's probably some ways that we can tell the difference between the two. And so if you looked at scholarly A, it was the AI generated version. And so somebody just speak up and give me a little indicator of what were some of the ways, you know, some clues that you used to identify that it was artificial intelligence. That means unmute and speak up, or else I have to call on people, and I hate cold calling.
I'll share what I thought. I think using words like firstly, moreover, it seemed more regimented than maybe a person where it would flow a little bit differently. Okay,
thanks, Renee, for sharing. And so for me, having learned to be a meat judging reasons writer, those words moreover and aforementioned, etc., I use those all the time because they were part of our writing and our discipline. And so I find myself sometimes second guessing my own writing because now I think people will think that it's artificial intelligence because those are kind of keywords that show up in there, as well as a lot of adjectives we see, etc. And so again, scholarly B was the actual intelligence. Now I have an example from a student's work. And so I asked the student ahead of time, could I use their work sample? And so we have a leader critique that was written either by a student or generated by AI. And I want you to take a minute to look at critique A. Okay, and here's leader critique B. Okay, so when you formulated which one is AI generated, drop your response into the chat. Okay, you guys are doing great at this today. So probably some of the same indicators could be found. And so here we see that critique A was actual intelligence. And you might have found items like, I noticed that my student used the name Catherine instead of Goebel, like we would typically do when we were writing. But again, very personalized. And as my students describe it, authentic. Last night we did a workshop with them over this. And that was one of their biggest and chief concerns is they want to make sure the work is authentic and they believe that you can tell the difference between their writing and artificially intelligence generated works. So that kind of sets the stage for where we're headed. You guys will have some opportunities for hands-on today, but we do want to give you a quick overview. I'm sure if you've attended workshops like this, they maybe went into a lot of depth. We want to hit on the big picture items. According to a report that was issued in December, it stated that 77% of organizations and companies are relying on some form of AI to increase efficiency, to have more controlled products and outputs, et cetera, within their organizations. So we need to have some understanding of how this works. So ChatGPT specifically is the format that we're focused on today. It is a generative AI technology. It does involve conversational AI. So that means that as people are putting in information, the full intention is for it to do a better job of making it sound more human-like, right? And so the data sources for it include textbooks, websites, articles. And as Jessica's going to show you here in a little while, you can even train it with your own work to help it better create outputs that match your tone, the way you write, and the way that you would approach various tasks, okay? Typically, you type in a prompt or a question, and you wait for the response. And if you don't like what you get, you either modify that prompt or you just ask it to generate again. I mentioned last night we did an activity with students. I asked them to come up with a creative title. One of my students just hit generate, generate, generate like 10 times until they got a title that they liked rather than changing the prompt. So it does have some opportunities. Obviously, we can use it to answer questions. Students or ourselves, we can use it for writing context. So essays, letters, abstracts. Jill will tell you that she uses it pretty often to help her get a base for writing a new letter for a student. Because if you all write a lot of recommendation letters, I think she read over 100 last year. It takes a lot of time for that initial letter, so it helps kind of generate the baseline for that. Obviously, customer support. Jessica mentioned that she uses it for lesson plans, chapter outlines, and activities. I use it for a lot of that as well, especially at the start of the semester where things didn't go as planned due to weather and I needed some alternative assignments, but I didn't have all day to create them. So I plugged in for my web design students what I really wanted them to do. and I took and converted the content that was given to me in 2 seconds into something that was usable in 30 instead of 2 hours. So, and then also generating code. So this may be for some folks in the more technical side, but it certainly has a ton of opportunities for us to, again, be more efficient, find some continuity, enhance our output, or sometimes just get started when we have writer's block. Now, the limitations are some of the areas where people get a little fearful. One is that there's concern because some of it is repetitive and then it doesn't generate original thought. Now, if you look at details about generative AI models and as they continue to advance, they are stating that they are able to create original content, but obviously they're doing it in a manner we would do where we read information, synthesize it, and generate something new. We do have to be mindful of the inaccuracy of responses. I gave Jill those essays that I had for the examples earlier, and the first thing she said was like paragraph 3. There was an error in some of the data that AI had generated in that version where the student had it right. We also have to be concerned about the biases that are created not only through the algorithms, but the way that we prompt for information. So we have to be mindful that we can increase or interject our own implicit bias, as well as thinking about what are the limitations. So an example would be, I did ask, because we're doing some other work with this, for it to give me a comprehensive list. So this was ChatGPT, of other platforms that do the same thing as ChatGPT, but that are not ChatGPT. And it would not. It wouldn't give me a list of anything but its own resources. So we have to recognize that in its training model, it will only recognize and give results that it's been trained to give. Okay. And again, we're only as good, the data that we get is only as good as the way that we request or prompt information. So it takes a little bit of practice as we've worked through this to make sure that we're getting the output that we want. So those are some things to be mindful of. And Jill mentioned the policies earlier. Those policies can also be a limitation that if our institutions say we can't use it, then we have to find alternative ways to, again, get more out of our day with less. Okay. All right. At this time, I'm going to hand it over to Jessica and let her get you all started on the activities.
Awesome. Thanks, Cassandra. Thanks, Dr. Cox. Okay, so why you're really here, right? You want to be able to put this into practice and learn some tips and tricks. And so the first thing that we're going to do today is we are going to use some instructions that are on the next slide. Also, there is a shared folder that I will share with you at the end and I can go ahead and share that now, that will allow for you to access the direct documents. If you want to document up and you don't just want to have it on your screen, or you need to print it or something like that, that you will have access to it. And they'll be labeled as activity 1 and activity 2. One says like a group activity and one says research. So today, the one format we're going to use is creating a group activity. And then of course, if you are more research focused, you can absolutely edit it as we're going along to do like more of a research tract. Perfect. Okay, so for this activity, you are going to need to have ChatGPT pulled up. So hopefully you have a dual screen situation. If not, bust out an iPad, a cell phone will work, or you can minimize us in the corner and I'll talk through some things. So you're going to use ChatGPT to brainstorm and outline a plan for a group activity. So we've laid out some time here. The first thing I want you to do is to select a topic. So think about something that you would potentially teach in your classroom. If you, as a leadership educator, what's a topic, a theory, a concept you would teach in your classroom? And I just want you to go to ChatGPT and start a conversation with it. Ask it, hey, I need to create a group activity. Here's my topic. Just start a basic sentence with it. Just put that in as your prompt. And we're going to see what pops up. And if you want to go on a more of a research track, you can say, hey, I'm working on a research project. This is a topic that I want to explore. So we're going to start very basic with that.
And just a little spoiler alert, we're going to ask you all to share and talk here in a minute. So I just wanted to preface it. You know, sometimes I like a little warning. So I thought we should throw that in as well, Jess.
Perfect. Thank you. And I have linked the SharePoint drive. If you are more of a pull up on a separate tab, the SharePoint drive will have a folder with our resources. And at the end of the presentation, that's where we'll also add that. There will be an opportunity for you to also get that folder at the end of the presentation. So, and we can share it with Dr. Jenkins so he can send it out as well. We need to. Yeah, Cassandra has it pulled up now. It'll be the ChatGPT activity ALE. It's a PDF. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, so that we should have already gotten that first little prompt. So the next thing I want you to do is I want you to go. So we've done step 1, we've done step 2. We're looking at step 3. I want you to use a prompt like the one provided. Please create a group activity that explores, let's say you use ethical leadership dilemmas in healthcare organizations. Maybe that's the topic you want to talk about, and provide a clear outline of an activity, including objectives, materials needed, and steps to be followed. So you can copy and paste that prompt, type in something, give it some direction. So you want it to create an activity. And as it's building, we've built in some time here. I'm curious, would anybody like to share some of the things that are already coming up on your screen on your ChatGPT? What are some of the things, like what was your topic? And now that you've put in the prompt for step 3, what are some things that you're getting back from ChatGPT? Anyone care to share?
If you're an introvert like me, you can drop it in the chat.
Yeah, feel free to drop it in the chat. Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. I want you to be comfortable. Feel free. Ask it. Okay, we've got Kate said, I asked it to create an activity on leader emergence versus leader effectiveness. It created a lesson plan before I even asked for it to provide an outline. It's awesome. Yep. Created a lesson plan before I even asked it to provide an outline. Yeah, it's wild. So I can, if I tell it that I'm going to create a group activity and I want it to be on this topic, a lot of times it will go ahead and prompt itself to do that step 3. Let's see, anyone else? Okay. Awesome. Okay, Jonathan said, initially it gave me more general ideas, but it became more specific after I used this prompt. And his prompt was, please create a group activity that explores passive-aggressive leaders and how to interact with them effectively, positively. Provide a clear outline of the activity, including objectives, materials needed, and steps to be followed. Yes, that's awesome. And I'm sure it gave you a more detailed outline after that. Yes, fantastic. Those are some great ones. Okay, we'll see if one more person wants to share and then we'll move on to step 4.
I do have to say, I found it really interesting that when I added the third prompt, now it's very specific and it's even telling me what materials I need, like flip charts, markers, sticky notes. The duration is so many minutes. It didn't do that at first, so.
Perfect. Yeah, it's amazing. This is a great place. Well, I mean, I use it for this kind of thing all the time. I'll have an idea in my head and I'm like, this is a little far-fetched. Can I make this fit in 30 minutes? And I'll add that prompt in there. And then I have kind of a rough outline to edit from. Okay, so we're going to move on. We're already kind of in group 4. We're sharing that generated activity plan. Does anybody else like to share? Oh, I asked for it to create an activity for my students on Bowman and Dill's framework, no further direction, and it gave me what students should do for each of the 4 frames. Fantastic.
I can share too, building on Kate, ChatGPT also suggested flip charts and markers. So it kept suggesting sort of flip charts and discussions. So then I started adding in, what about an experiential exercise, which still seemed discussion-y. So seems to favor a certain type of activity, I think.
Sure. Yeah.
I put
Okay.
in to change it to an online class because I got the markers as well for more diverse setting.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay, so now let's talk through the optimization of this. How we've got these general ideas, but yeah, I might be an online educator. I might have zero resources. I might be in a foreign country leading a workshop and my bag got lost and I now have nothing, right? And I need it to be able to modify what it's giving me based on my needs. So we're going to talk about some practices for enhanced optimization. We're going to go through these one at a time. I'm going to give you some examples, not specifically related to this activity, but some things. So the first thing you can do is to provide additional details. And so up here at the very top, it says JE. You'll see what I asked for ChatGPT to give me. So the first thing we can do is ask for provided additional details. For example, I teach an online class, so I don't have access to markers and flip charts, won't work for me. So in the prompt up here, I said, please write me a recommendation letter for the Mississippi Association of Conservation Districts Endowed Fund Scholarship for my student, John Doe. This is some information about him. So you'll see that I provided additional details. Okay. I made sure I included his name with his permission, of course, what his degree was in. Also, I listed how I knew the student, as well as what the association that I wanted the letter to go to. And it provided me with multiple responses. So a really cool thing about ChatGPT is if you don't like that first response, you can go back and edit your prompt. There's a little pin at the top. There's a clipboard for you to copy, but there's also an edit button and you can add more detail and hit resubmit again, and it will give you a second response and you can go back and forth between the two. So these are just two of the responses that it gave me based on a few additional details. Okay, Cassandra will go to the next one. So I hit edit. This is my third response. And you can see now that I basically took the student, I always require my students, if they ask me to write a recommendation letter, to put in, what their future career goals are, a little bit about the activities. And for this student, I literally copied statements from his resume and put them into ChatGPT to add some additional details. And now my letter is much more personalized. It hits on just about everything that I want a recommendation letter to hit on. Now, because I added those details, it's, I would say, like 80% there. And then I need to go back in and edit it, right, to make it mine, to fit my tone and my voice. Something we're going to talk about in a second is an optimization technique is I can also go put a previous recommendation letter that I wrote myself entirely, and then ChatGPT will model it after that based on this student's information. So just providing that little extra piece of detail will give you a much better response. Okay, I'm going to look at the chat really quick. Yeah, Paige, I see some things that you put in. Cool. Zoom meeting links, shared documents. Absolutely. Awesome. Okay, the second thing that we want to do to enhance our ChatGPT is to humanize it. Okay. If there is nothing that you take away from using ChatGPT today, this is a great place to start. So I always prompt it with, hey, in a minute or in a second. I talk to it like I'm talking to my girlfriend on the phone. Hey, in a minute, I'm going to ask you to help me create an activity, but I want you to fully understand exactly what I need. So in this case, I was saying course and goals, objectives of the activity. Ask me 10 questions that will help you understand my need for the assignment. If there's nothing else that you learn about using ChatGPT, this is the #1 most helpful tip I've ever given someone or used myself, because it wants to understand your needs, right? And so instead of you guessing what details you're going to put in there, it says, I need to know these 10 things. And you can say, okay, #1, here's the answer. #2, here's the answer. #3, I'm not sure. Can you expand on that a little bit? And once you answer all these questions, I would say what ChatGPT gives you back is about 85 to 90% where you want it to be, because now it fully encompasses and understands what you want. So it asks me these questions. I don't know if there's a second part to this, Cassandra. Slide over. Perfect. So that one we'll play with in just a second. There's not a second piece to it because I didn't put in a prompt, but humanizing it is the number one thing you do. Just ask it, hey, what do you need from me to understand what I'm asking you for? Okay, I use Dr. Rucker here. I always called her Dr. Jill because she was my master's advisor. So I'm always like, Dr. Jill. And then I'm like, oh, I got to use her last name sometimes. So, so you have to ask it to change perspective. So this is truly a screenshot of my prompt. I said, write an email to Dr. Jill Rucker at the University of Arkansas, telling her that I am not willing to guest lecture her class, which is not true. I would do it anytime. And it gave me a very formal letter here. Like, I always know when people use ChatGPT in an email because it starts with, I hope this finds you in good health. I hope this finds you well. So, and it gives me a very formal letter. And it says sincerely. I don't sign an email like that ever. And so if we'll go to the next slide, I asked it to change perspective. Cassandra, will you advance that? I don't think I can do it. Maybe I can. No, I can't.
It is advanced.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Go back one. Thank you. Perfect. So in the back was my initial one. And then I said, write this from the perspective of, I'm a junior faculty member. Oh, one more. Go back forward. Sorry, y'all. There we go. It's changing. There we go. Write this from the perspective of a junior faculty member who genuinely loves and respects Dr. Rucker. Right now I've asked, it's like, this is very formal. That's great. It's a good place to start, but you need to understand that this is a person who I love and respect. And you also need to understand that I'm a junior faculty member and she is a tenured faculty member, and that relationship might look a little different. And so you'll see some things in here like that I would say maybe to our mentor, your dedication to education and leadership is such a source of inspiration. Like, yeah, I would probably say that to her, but it used the perspective that I put in and changed the tone of the letter. Then we're going to go a little bit further. And I asked it to make some basic changes. So in the top left corner, I said, simplify. Like I would never send her an email with that many paragraphs ever. I would probably text her. So I said, simplify it. So you can see still has the same tone, but we've taken it down quite a bit. And then the last thing that I did to make basic changes, I said, make this more casual. We're friends. And you'll see that it says like, hey, Jill, take care at the bottom. Like it says, hey, Jill, I hope you're doing well. Like, thanks for thinking of me. That is very conversational because I asked it to be casual because we are friends. So we went from a very formal letter that I would have sent someone maybe I didn't know at all, but I am like, oh, okay, they're an esteemed colleague. I don't know them that well, but let me send them this email, down to something that I would probably text her at the last result, right? And so you can ask it to just make some basic changes and change perspectives, which is always great. I've had it do this we had to write a letter. We had to do some work for the college, and I knew I was going to be presenting it to the dean and the associate dean. And I needed to make sure before I went in there that I was like, write this from the perspective of I've told my colleague this, a people-pleasing assistant faculty member who doesn't want to upset anybody and loves her job and would like to keep it, things like that. And so it made sure to go in there and kind of like sugarcoat some things. And then I could tailor it back out. And it made sure I was more respectful and a little less direct. Okay. Next tip. And I talked about this a little bit with the recommendation letter. You can use information or a document that you already have access to help direct your prompts. So for example, I was teaching a course over like last fall, and here are I needed it to provide some suggested topics to create a syllabus for me. And so I took the university's like basic Word document syllabus. It's just a template. And I copy and pasted it directly into ChatGPT. And I asked for it to help me come up with some topics and assignments to add to this template syllabus. You can do this with a recommendation letter that you've already written, especially if you use a certain tone or a certain layout and you want it to match step by step, go ahead and put that in there and say like, here is a previous recommendation letter I've used, or here is my lesson plan template that I always use. Take the information that you provided to me today and make it fit into this lesson plan template. And it will provide it for you. So if you'll hit forward, Cassandra. It took everything and it put it into, you'll see this text, so I could copy and paste this directly into Word. And it left spaces for me to do things that it didn't already know, right? It doesn't know what day and time I was teaching the class. It didn't know the section number or if it was online.
Yeah, right.
If it was online. And so it left a space for me to enter that information. So this is also a great tip. If you have a chapter of a textbook, if you have a PDF, like I have taken a PDF from a research paper and stuck it into ChatGPT and said like, synthesize this for me. Like I need the TLDR. I don't know if you'll know what that means. Too long, didn't read. I need the TLDR version of this document. And it will spit out the main points. It'll hit the high points. It'll highlight it. And then I'll say like, great. My students read this as a homework. What are some questions I should ask them? And based on that document, it'll be able to pull things out for me. So I have used this like with research, specifically synthesizing some things, and then also recommendation letters. You can see here, created a template. It also laid out a course map for me based on some things that I had already put in. So this is just another example of one of the responses that you could get based on modifying or asking for more detail. I have a colleague who has ChatGPT open. There are threads. So once you open a thread, you can just leave it there. So like everything that has to do with my TCAL programs in one thread. So it remembers like what's happening. But one of my colleagues, he uses this specifically for his email, this optimization tip. He has a blanket email that he would normally send somebody. And then every time he gets an email, as long as it doesn't have sensitive information, he copy and paste it into ChatGPT and says, I'm being completely honest. He says, respond to this. Tell them it's a great idea, but don't commit me to anything. And he takes the response and emails it back to the person. So again, you see kind of an outline. That's just scrolling down on that first prompt. Yeah, with a course schedule. Okay, so now we're going to use some of those techniques, those optimization techniques that we just talked about to enhance the prompts that you've already put in. So I want you to stay in that same tab of your ChatGPT. Don't move to a new tab. And in this activity, again, you're going to optimize your results. So we're going to use these techniques. I'm going to walk you through and we're going to discuss. So reconfirm the topic, selected it in activity 1. So you might have done a group activity or you might have gone the research track, but go ahead and say, hey, we're continuing on with this topic. Reconfirm it. Now, some of you have already gotten some more optimized responses because you continue to enter details and things like that. Tell the system that you were an online educator, but I want you to go ahead and move to step 2. So you're already in that conversation. I want you to tell ChatGPT that you want to optimize your group activity or your research study to make it more engaging and or informative and effective. So let's try that prompt. And I'm looking in the chat because I see some things came in. Okay. Okay. Then I want you to try step 3. And this is going to take, it might take a little bit more than 3 minutes, but now I want you to do that key step in humanizing ChatGPT. So it's already spit out some information. You may be thinking like, man, this looks really good. This would normally take me like 3 hours to come up with and start, get some words on a paper. But I want you to ask ChatGPT to gain a deeper understanding. So ask it like, can you ask me questions to gain a deeper understanding of what I'm looking for? You don't have to copy this prompt directly, but ask me some questions to help you help me. And I'm curious in this step, I'm going to pause for a second. What are some of the responses y'all are getting on the humanizing ChatGPT? Was it 5 questions, 10 questions? Did you specify? Ten questions with some sub questions. Okay. 10. Okay. 10. Yeah. Right. And so we know that this language model is, was created in a way for it to basically ask 10 questions. Yeah. 10, 10, 10. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few seconds to answer those questions. So you're going to provide those additional details. You don't have to answer all the questions, but answer as many as you can. And that's really step 4. I want you to give it some of those additional details. And anything that it didn't ask you, if you're an online educator, make sure you add that detail. If the only supplies that you want for this are smelly markers and a giant sticky pad, that sounds great. If you want this activity to be able to be done outside, put that in there. So answer a few of those questions that it's asking you, it's prompting you to answer, and then add just a little bit more detail.
So Jess, I know what my strategy is, but I'd like to hear your strategy. Do you copy and paste all the questions back into the prompt and then answer those? Or do you just say, I'm answering the questions and you number it out?
I just number it out when I do it.
That's what I do.
So personally, I just number it out. And sometimes I even answer, I put 1 and answer it, and then I put 2 and answer it. And I think it really depends on the day. Sometimes ChatGPT will regenerate between each one, and sometimes it will wait until I've answered all the questions. But I typically will number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's hard because you always use the enter button on ChatGPT. So sometimes it looks like you're just typing a long run-on sentence. But you can always do that and then hit the edit button. And once you hit the edit button, you can copy and paste or hit enter and add spacing there, and then ask it to refresh and regenerate the response. So that's a little tip for you as well. I do that actually quite a bit. So, and the great thing is, as y'all are doing this, if you love the response, also you'll notice at the bottom of its response to you, there is the clipboard for copy. There is a good response, thumbs up, and a bad response, thumbs down. And this goes back to what Cassandra was talking about, how it learns about what you want. It learns your tone. It learns about your expectations. It's trying to gauge the quality of its response to make some modifications. And so that's a really good tool. I actually use that quite a bit as well. Okay. Okay, so we're going to move to step 5. If you have a specific perspective, I want you to make sure you put that in. So an example, I'd like the activity to be written in an encouraging and inclusive tone that resonates with the participants. Can you help with that? And it will generate. So again, adding a bit more detail. If this is great if you're teaching to a group of adult learners who might be at a lower reading or education level, if you need to make sure that you are speaking in a language in which they understand, versus academics, right? This is a great opportunity for you to do that. Okay. We're going to move to step 6. If you have any similar work or guidelines that you would like for it to match, go ahead and enter those now. So I know for me, if I was having this write an activity for class, I start my contemporary ag issues course with hot topics. So I'm like, okay, leave me 15 minutes at the beginning of a class for hot topics. I want a 5-minute break built in because it's a 3-hour-long course. And I want to do temperature checks throughout the activity to check in with what my students are learning, what they're comprehending. So anything that you would normally do in a lesson plan or an activity that's just kind of your signature style, this is a great opportunity for you to either put in, an example document or to ask it to match those guidelines. I like to have a big light bulb aha moment at the end. And so like, that's something that I really want for my students to feel like they can share. Or, hey, I need to have a ticket out the door. So you can ask it to incorporate things like that at this stage. Okay. And then step 7 is really just anything that you feel like you need now that it has taken into consideration all these additional prompts. So, maybe it gave you a good outline, but it didn't include specific objectives, or maybe you want to have 4 strong objectives. Again, materials needed. Like I have, and maybe that's saying, hey, every student in my classroom has an iPad. That's a technology we can utilize. Include that in the activity, right? Or I have done this before when I've been out of town for a conference, like I am handing this off to an undergraduate teaching assistant. I need a step-by-step, minute-by-minute plan for them to follow for this classroom instruction time today, because I knew that's how the student, how she functioned. She needed that. And so I had it break it down even further into a step-by-step plan. So any additional things that you feel like you need to input into ChatGPT for you to get the response you want, I want you to do that now. And I'm curious, after we've used these optimization techniques, what things do you think that ChatGPT missed? I asked it to break it into Google Slides. Awesome. That's great. I've asked it to create reflection questions like, this is a great activity. Can you create some reflection questions for me that I can share with my students and grade? And it always breaks down. It usually gives you some reflection questions and then a rubric, which is nice. Did anyone have anything else that they asked for it to do? So break it into Google Slides. That's awesome. And you can use Canva's AI right along with ChatGPT. It's built in there now. So
you're saying that it will go and build it into Canvas?
So it won't build over into Canvas, but Canva, like canva.com, like a design tool,
Yes.
they have Magic AI, Magic Write, and Magic Design in there now too. And so
Yes.
they can design a shelf for you. And now that you have everything that you need on your Google Slides or Canva slides in a format, it's literally a copy and paste situation. Now, I wouldn't recommend that. I don't think that's the most ethical practice, but I would edit them a little bit, but it is a good option for you. Right. So now we've created a PowerPoint and we have a completely structured course outline for the day.
Right. And you're saying you can put that into each of those slides, or does it automatically intersect? I'm asking.
They don't automatically intersect at this time. There are some technologies that are coming out that will be doing that, like that work in a suite system like Google or Microsoft Suite. But Canva doesn't currently do that with ChatGPT right now.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have their, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so now I want us to just kind of step back and review, right? We had our initial response from ChatGPT based on our first activity, and now we have this ideally an optimized response that's tailored to our needs. I'm sure there will be some things that we will need to change, but I want someone to explore some of the differences between the two. If you wouldn't mind sharing kind of your initial thoughts on the original response from our first activity to now. What are some of the differences that you are seeing? And feel free to drop it in the chat as well. And I'm curious what people got back. This is great. Oh, yeah. Oh, I don't see any. It fits my personality and style of teaching more appropriately after the changes. That's great. That's awesome. That's the goal. It was more detailed and experiential learning focused. Great. That's awesome. That's a step in the right direction. Okay, anyone else? Would anyone else like to share? Did anyone find that it moved further away from their goal? I'm curious about that personally. In our workshop at ILA, I was the in-person person. So if you were there, I was in person and Cassandra was on. Yes, it did for me. So it moved further away from your goal. Interesting. You know, and we had one or two, we did this in groups at ILA. We had one or two groups where ChatGPT recommended something based on their topic, and they immediately were halfway through with this process and they were like, you know what, that seems pretty cool, and completely pivoted and went a different direction. So that is interesting. Yes, it did for me. Anyone else?
I can comment.
Sure.
So for me, it provided more details, but I'm not in love with the workshop. I would want to be in love with it, and it's definitely a starting guide for me to start brainstorming how I can make it more for me and more for me to love to facilitate, because that's one of my values. So yeah.
Yeah. And I love how you worded that. That is exactly a big take home message for this. And I'm sure Dr. Rucker and Dr. Cox will elaborate more on this in a second. ChatGPT is not going to solve all the world's problems, but it is a great resource for brainstorming. When I need to come up with, when I need to brainstorm and there's not another person in my office at 5 a.m., this is a great opportunity for me to hop on and feel like I'm talking to a person and bouncing ideas off of someone, right? There are opportunities for it to clearly and concisely flesh everything out. It takes learning those techniques in ChatGPT, how to put in prompts for that to happen. And also, we would encourage you, I think the three of us would strongly encourage everyone, go in and edit your prompts, make them yourself. That is expected, right? And you probably won't. I am never 1000% in love with anything that ChatGPT gives me, but I am usually 80% in love with it. I'm going 80% in for the kiss, and I just need it to come 20% the other direction, right? And so I'm usually pretty happy with it. But I always have to go back in and edit things. So I think, yeah, what you experience, Cassandra, is right on point. Okay. Well, thanks, guys. Do y'all have any questions about the optimization things before we move on? Okay.
Okay, Jill and I are going to hop back in right now and talk to you a little bit about a personalized plan. And so the things that you all are talking about in making adjustments are exactly the things that we experience. And I think Dr. Benson would agree that it's all about getting used to the platform and understanding how to make it work the way that you work, because the type of information I would want looks different from the way Dr. Rucker would want her stuff structured, would be different from the way Dr. Benson wants it structured. But we want you to have an opportunity to create a little bit of a personalized plan for how to use AI in a leadership class. We want you to take some time to think about a leadership specific lesson or assignment to create this plan. And Jill's going to give you an example of a prompt that she put in and the response that she received.
So just for context, currently this semester, I am teaching a leadership theory course through film analysis. So I am exploring different leadership theories, models, and concepts. We're talking through those with the students, and then we are analyzing those concepts using films. So recently I had my students go to the theater and watch The Boys in the Boat. If you haven't seen Boys in the Boat, you need to. It's fantastic. And so one of the things that I asked ChatGPT to do is, specifically for that movie, we analyzed team leadership, specifically using Hill's model. So I asked ChatGPT to come up with to help me build a lesson plan to provide some valuable insights about the dynamics of teamwork, collaboration, and leadership using Boys in the Boat and Hills team model. And so basically, and I timed it because I'm a timer, in 36 seconds, I had a 13 step plan for me to do in my 90-minute class. I agree with the person, and I think it was Cassandra who said, you know, it's not quite what I want. And I definitely identify with that. For me, I know Jess said it gives her about 80%. I love being creative and innovative. And that's one of the things that I love most about my job, being able to put my spin on things. And I think that's something that makes my classes unique. And I'm sure as educators, we all want to put our own spin in. So for me, I just want to point out, this is my brainstorming, and I really take it from there. So while it gave me 13 steps, there's some things that there's some share pair exercises in there. It gave me, I went back and I told it to give me some things with specific movie quotes to analyze. It's not able to do that. It wasn't able to pull that, but it gave me some ideas of what type of movie quotes perhaps I should be looking for. You know, again, 36 seconds is pretty darn good to give me a running start. And I think that I could have this lesson plan, what I would be doing in class. I kind of played with it. I got to where I wanted it to be in 22 minutes. Whereas before ChatGPT, I need to tell you, this was hours for me. But in 22 minutes, I am ready for my class tomorrow. And I feel really good about the things that ChatGPT created. Rubrics are also something that I don't know what it is about my brain. They take me forever to create. And I know that Cassandra, Dr. Cox, that she uses ChatGPT not only to create rubrics, but to create those rubrics in a format that will go directly into our online class system. Ours is Blackboard, and ChatGPT will crank that out. And I will tell you, for me, that is typically, those rubrics are very minimal editing, and it's a game changer. We talked a little bit, and I'm digressing a bit, so love me where I'm at. But we also talked about, I write recommendation letters. As a matter of fact, I wrote 4 this morning. I used ChatGPT for all 4 of those. Again, I want to be very careful when we talk about this, in that I do go back and I spend significant effort in editing those, because I want it to be in my tone. I want to be authentic. And one of the reasons I write recommendations is because I love my students so much, and they know that about me. So they have an expectation that if you get a Dr. Rucker recommendation letter, that it is going to be heartfelt, and that I'm going to add very specific things about those students, because I want to promote them and advocate for them. And so typically with ChatGPT, it'll give me a baseline. I ask my students for 3 to 5 bullet points that they specifically want me to cover about them in my recommendation letter. And so I make sure that I put that into ChatGPT, and then I spend about 10 to 11 minutes going back through and editing and making that letter truly mine. I think something to note is I'm always very careful. I know that Dr. Benson, that she gave the example of John Doe or Jane Doe. I'm going to be honest, I never put a student name in. That's just kind of my rule of thumb. I put in just in brackets student, or sometimes I'll put in, brackets XX, just because I'm sensitive about sharing any type of information. But for me, ChatGPT is a real game changer. And the more I use it, the better I get at it. And I think the better the system knows me. So again, I heard a fellow colleague refer to ChatGPT or AI in general like a calculator. Used to, we'd have to have extensive amounts of paper and chalkboards and to write out these very complicated equations. And now we have a calculator to help us quickly make these calculations. And I feel like AI, that's where we're moving. So I think it's really important for us to learn to use it ethically and effectively, while still maintaining our authenticity as professionals. So Cassandra, I'll go ahead and let you share your thoughts now and what you did with it.
Okay, so I think that authenticity that Dr. Rucker's talking about is so important, because again, when our students So they, in some of the past classes, when we've asked them, tell us that yes, they're okay if they use it. But I said, well, how would you feel if you knew that I wrote all of your recommendation letters using it? And the appalled looks on their faces. I said, don't worry, I didn't. But what if I did? How is that different than how you're using it? And I think it comes back to they want that authentic experience. They point to the fact that we know we can train it through that optimization that Dr. Benson told us, but that authenticity. And so what you all are talking about, that's why we ask you to make a personalized plan. And so the one that I used was more along the lines of, I actually want my students to use AI more in my classrooms, but I need to have a way that fits within university policy. And we have some variation in some official policy now that we didn't have last year when we were working on our first go round of this workshop. And so when I put in my prompt, I ask it to develop activities or opportunities where I can engage my students in their use of AI in a leadership theory course. I was very clear and specified that this would be with my permission to use AI, because that's the policy that I follow is when I give students permission, I'm clear about how they can use it, and that fits in our academic policy. But I also specified that this was for an upper level 4,000 or 5,000 level class. And so some of the responses that I thought were really cool that I'll probably go ahead and work with later. One was predictive analytics and leadership. And I love history because I think it tells us so much about the things that we could, should, would be doing as leaders. And so it introduces the concept of predictive analytics and leadership to students using AI as an analysis tool. So to take historical data and make informed predictions about future trends, helping them anticipate challenges and opportunities. And so while that gives me a basic overview, then I would take it, plug it in and say, okay, for this specific topic in my theory class, I want you to build 2 different assignments, one for my graduate students and one for my undergraduate students. And I would describe for it how I wanted that to look. Again, putting in some of those factors about how I teach class, how much time, etc. Some of the other ideas that I liked was the AI-powered team collaboration tools that they could use it to facilitate communication and project management, which are, again, workforce skills they might need. And then ethics is another big area for me. So having them conduct ethical decision-making analysis using AI instead of their own personal opinions, feelings, thoughts, and beliefs, I thought were all interesting. But again, I'd personalize it. So hopefully that will inspire you all to come up with some topics. We want you to take just a few minutes. Probably what you want to do, unless you're going to use the prompt that you previously created with Dr. Benson, you may want to create a new chat or prompt and then plug in your requests to see if you can create a personalized plan for how you will use leadership in your class, a specific lesson as you mentor students. And we'll give you a few minutes to do that. And we will share these too, so be prepared. Okay, if you already have something in place, you can go ahead and drop it into the chat or speak up and share with us. Okay, if we get 3 ideas. Okay, Paige said she had to get very specific, and then it gave a good example that could be used. I think that's one of the things that maybe takes a little bit of time is just getting that specificity down and getting used to how to phrase things to get what you want.
And
Anyone
just to
else?
add to that, Paige, I think for me that was something that I really had to work at to learn, and I'm still learning that. I love how Jessica said, Dr. Benson said, I talk to it like it's my girlfriend, because that's who Jessica Benson is. But for me, I don't talk to it like that, and so I've really had to work on, I guess, learning my tone when I talk to ChatGPT.
Okay, Cassandra said she liked the output for the workshop she's planning. She used ChatGPT's wording to further help understand what it's trying to tell. Okay. So these ideas help us bring these concepts together. And I think the second part of that is how do we use it to generate research as an assistant professor? It's really important that everything I do is maximizing in some way. So as I come up with ideas, I typically prompt, okay, now how could I use this to collect some data? Not that I want my students to always be the points for data collection, but I have graduate students who need posters and mentorship and all of these things. So then I usually turn around and ask it to help me, what would be key ways that I could actually collect some data from this to better understand behaviors of students or learning outcomes, and then try to generate some research components too. So I would say when you have these big picture ideas and they're innovative and a lot of fun, don't forget that you can also use it to help supplement in that way. Okay, we're getting to the end, and I saw some folks had to hop off, but we do have some closing questions for you all. So if you can scan the QR code, or I have it in the chat and I'm hitting send on it right now. If you could answer those items, they would be much appreciated. And then like we did on the first one, if you guys can drop a thumbs up or a reaction into the chat or just the word done, we'll know that it's time to move on. Okay, we're starting to get people come in and say they're completed. So we're going to move it on and let Dr. Benson wrap it up for us here.
Perfect. I always do that, y'all. So, we would like to just now have a little discussion. Like, what questions do you still have about AI? Today we've talked you through a little bit about what it is, how to use it. We've maybe introduced you to it for the first time, but what questions do you still have about AI? Like, what are some things that we need to think through, and maybe some things we can answer? You can drop them in the chat. You can unmute, speak up.
I have a question, comment, maybe, I don't know, but I use AI a lot for different things, kind of, you were sharing pretty much every day. But when talking with colleagues about something that's been developed with the assistance of AI, they don't always understand that about that. And you can tell sometimes that they're like, I don't know about that. So how do you navigate those conversations in a way that shows them like, yes, this is a real thing, and it does lead to positive results for what you're doing with our work?
Sure. And I think Jill will have a little bit different perspective than me on that. Because she kind of was that person for a long time and sometimes still is. But one thing that we have done within my department here at Mississippi State is our department had asked us to have a brown bag lunch, and we do it on different topics all the time. But we had a lot of faculty who were still trying to understand it. And there are 3 of us that use not just ChatGPT, but several different AI platforms every single day. And so a lot of the time when we have fear of something, it's because it's unknown, right? We don't know how to use it. We don't know what the outputs are, what are the ramifications? Maybe there's not a policy in place on that. And so some of that I think will develop over time, right? As our professional associations are creating ethics policies and we're talking about those things. And also sometimes that conversation starts with, hey, come in my office. Let me show you how this works. Because my PhD is still valuable. Like my degree and my education is still valuable. It can't give me a perfect output, right? There's still thought that has to go into this. And so for me, how we've approached that here at Mississippi State is education. Like, how can we educate people on how to use this ethically, and exactly what it does? Because there's some misconceptions in what it actually produces and what people thinks it produces. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think we have to be able to educate people on how it works and be open about it, right? Like, we need to be open about it and also make sure we're using it in an ethical manner.
I would just add in, I think conversation is the number one factor. I think we have to talk about it. We have to be open and honest about how we're using it. And again, for me, maintaining that authenticity is really important. And I think Dr. Benson, Dr. Cox, and myself would all really emphasize that, is being authentic. It doesn't give me the perfect answer. I am always having to go back and put my spin and my input on things. For me, it's a baseline. It's not the completed house. It's just, it gives me a place to start. And so again, I think just to reiterate what Jess said, is having those conversations and, talking about that openly. This is what I'm doing. This is how I'm using it. This is how I'm maintaining my integrity, my ethical values, and my authenticity.
Yeah, I agree with both. And I think it does have to do, our campus at the University of Arkansas has been very proactive. I really appreciated that they didn't instantly ban it. It gave us the opportunity to really engage in dialogue across the university and kind of determine for ourselves how we might want to use it. I was told last night that one of our colleagues who has been anti any type of AI at all had finally told students that they could use it in their class for generating and brainstorming, and gave them some specific ways. And I felt incredibly accomplished, because while this person isn't using it, it felt like a big deal for them to finally tell the students, who I, myself, and others in my department have been trying to educate on how to use it, because it is happening in the workforce. My students who are working for PR firms as full-time interns year-round, they're using it day in and day out to generate content. So if I'm not using it to help train students and get them ready, then they will be behind other people when they reach the workforce. So I think that constant learning, showing that openness that you're willing to show them how to use it right, whether it's a colleague or a student, is probably the most important part of it.
Okay, any other questions? Or we can talk about some apprehensions and concerns. I know that we had a lot of those. We've had a lot of those in the past, so. That's great. We're all using it then. We're all good to go.
I think for me, one of my apprehensions or concerns is it's ever evolving. It's always changing. And I feel like we're always being introduced to another platform that's utilizing AI or a new form of AI. And so again, just for me, an apprehension is staying on top of things and making sure that I'm well informed about what's happening in the world of AI.
Well, maybe it's the elephant in the room, but I struggle with, again, I'm a rule follower too, and ethics is very important, but it's really hard for me to conceptualize that if I wrote, say, my dissertation, but I could put it into summary, which would break it all down and give me an output that summarizes my own work, and I could get my manuscript out the door tomorrow instead of my weekends and my night times and all the other times that I would like to spend with my family. I really want our organizations to come up with some policies, because I'm not doing it because I don't feel right about it. I'm pretty sure other people are already using it to do some of these things. So I just need to have the go ahead or the no, so that way I know where I'm going to be at. So I hope our organizations will start to address this. I think, are there any
Okay.
wrap-up questions?
Thoughts, concerns? Cool ways you're using this, ways we didn't talk about today.
Have any of you used it? I don't know if this is available in the free version of ChatGPT or if it's just in the Plus, but uploading documents that you're using for it to scan, like review the documents and then provide you more feedback based on that.
I've taken parts of my documents and put in there to ask it to give me a summarization, but in terms of other feedback, I'm a big fan of Grammarly for that. And so essentially I put it into Grammarly and run it through and ask it for feedback in that way and make adjustments. I don't need the paid version to make my papers better, but I had a graduate student last semester who said, I feel like I'm not a very good writer. First semester graduate student, was asked to work with a colleague who is well respected and he didn't want to embarrass himself. And he put it into ChatGPT and he said, man, you would not believe how nice it looked. And he said, and I panicked all at once and thought, I can't use this, and deleted it, hoping no one would ever know beside me when he told me. And so I know it can be done, but I think, again, those ethical considerations, I just rely on Grammarly to help me clean up items, just because I don't think we have the rules yet.
And I've done the same thing. I've used it to put in bits and pieces, and I've uploaded. I haven't uploaded anything that's like a large size file, because there are other AI, and I'm blanking on the name right now. There are other AI platforms that do that better than ChatGPT. But I have used it to analyze some articles or a PDF or a Word document, something like that, but never anything super large. We also have a question in the chat. When we edit our responses, ChatGPT automatically changes the stream of answers. So when you edit your response, it will give you little arrows to the left or right, and it will show you the initial response that it gave you, and then it will show you your new response based on your edits. So you'll always have access to that as long as you don't delete your stream, and you can go back and pick. And that's a great tool because you can put it back on the first response if you like that better, and then work off of that one, or you can go ahead and use the new response and use that thumbs up or thumbs down to tell it which one you liked better. Perfect. Awesome. Great. Yeah. Thanks, Renee.
Yeah, I think we've enjoyed our afternoon with you all. So thanks for sticking it out.
Yes.
Yeah, can we
And
just
then-
have a round of oh, sorry, just gonna
Oh,
show
no.
some gratitude.
Cassandra's going to move to the next slide, and the QR code to access the files are right here. So you can scan that. And I will also drop a link right now, copy link into the chat. And then Dan, maybe we can share this with you so it can be available with the recording. But the resources will be there, and we'll make sure to add the presentation. Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
You're good. No, perfect. Just wanted to ask for a round of applause for our facilitators today. Really appreciate y'all taking the time to do this, and it's great to have. I think we had 20-something folks on at one point, which is fantastic, and it's just a great experience and some great professional development for our ALE members, and maybe we've got some folks that may now join ALE, which would be great. So, yeah, go ahead, Kate.
Not to interrupt you, Dan, but Jessica, when I click on your link, it
Yes.
wants me to log into Mississippi State. I think it's protected to your institution.
Let me change that. I'm sorry.
No, no worries.
But yeah, the one you put in earlier did not prompt, so I was able to access that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I wonder if that changed.
But
Okay.
yes, we'll
Yeah,
definitely.
updated.
Yeah, I'll definitely. John will let me know when he has the recording ready to go, and then we'll send that out with the link to the folder, and if we're missing anything, I'll certainly reach out to y'all.
Well, and if anybody's like me, I always have questions after the fact. So our contact information is provided. Please contact us with any questions that you have. The three of us are all open books, and so we'd be happy to continue the dialogue.
All right. Thanks, y'all.